So last but not least, our final team is the Mary Miss City as Living Laboratory project. You're going to hear about that. I just want to say that this client arose because I knew Mary Miss through the wisdom of Columbia University. A number of years ago, Columbia held a very unusual meeting at Lamont. I don't know if any of you were there, between scientists and artists in the city. And I happened to be on the breakout team that Mary Miss was on, and got to know her, I guess this was something like 7 years ago, and we've been keeping in touch ever since. And I've been running the workshop, and then suddenly I had a eureka moment. Gee, why don't I do a workshop with Mary? And I lost all these years in terms of trying to talk to her before this. Anyway, so we finally got together, and we put this this project together with the team that you're about to hear. So I'll turn it over to Anna, who is one of the managers, and Matthew, who is another team member.
So thank you, Stuart, for your introduction. So as I said, my name is Anna, and this is Matt, who will be giving our presentation and our project for the rest of our team, who includes Jennifer Mendez, Jared Talkin, John Squires, and Melissa Diaz. So our client, Mary Miss, she's the artistic director and founder of City as a Living Laboratory, which is a nonprofit that she established with the mission of making sustainability tangible through the arts. And she has a variety of different projects around the country and the world that are unique art installations that are outside, so in order to increase the audience that her art is reaching out to. So all her installations encompass some aspect of sustainability, whether it's environmental, social, and economic issues. And the ultimate mission is to get people to think about or develop a sense of place and to begin to understand their surroundings and in New York City and understand New York City as part of an urban ecosystem. And she's been able to do this successfully through her artwork. So, the Broadway 1000 Steps project is her newest project based here in New York City, and it's based on the idea of these hub sites will be located all along Broadway, as you see on the map, with various different locations that are strategically placed and will address a theme addressed in the Plan NYC sustainability agenda, or other ones that she's created, which include water, life, energy, waste, and air. And so these hub sites will include various forms of media, which include these mirrors, which, as you see in the picture in the woman, as she's looking in the mirror, these lines correspond to some sort of either infrastructure or something around the area around them. And that one, it points to a LEED certified building or to a green roof in order to bring awareness of sustainable practices going on in New York City. So part of the motivation for all of Mary's work and for this project is that, especially in an urban setting such as New York City, people don't always see themselves as engaging in the sustainability dialogue, even though a lot of these issues are very relevant to them. So this is a way, because it's an outdoor project and it's going to be covering a wide expanse of New York City with different kinds of neighborhoods, different levels of, I guess we could say, interaction in the sustainability conversations. So it's going to reach a very wide audience. Additionally, we also wanted to bring together a lot of organizations that have similar missions or are working on very similar problems within New York City, who don't necessarily have any communication or limited communication between themselves, which also limits resource sharing, which is very important in achieving their goals. And then furthermore, Mary Miss is only one of many artists who's using their artwork to engage in the sustainability conversation, and there's potential to reach out to so many artists who would want to be involved in this, and just many untapped creative resources. So based on sort of these issues that we've identified, we created 2 objectives to work towards in this semester. The first one was to increase environmental awareness through facts related to themes of sustainability, which Matt's going to go a little bit more into, but this was based on the idea of creating more accessible information, or more easily digestible. And then secondly, we also wanted to develop a network, a sustainability network, network along Broadway that would connect both organizations to each other, to creative partners, and more to their community, so that there's more of a sense of a community along these hub sites to increase conversation. So now Matt will go into some of the methods that we went through to work towards our objectives.
Thank you, Anna. The first step of our project was to create equivalences that clearly convey sustainable themes at hub sites. Equivalences are short messages that use facts to transform the larger sustainable issues within an urban environment and do something that is more easily digestible by the public, which is important because these issues can often be very complex, yet small steps can be taken in order to improve New York City as an ecosystem. We focused our research on the urban issues of energy, land, water, waste, and life, and tried to focus on the issue that was most prevalent at each hub site. We did this so that the equivalencies would be localized and pertain to the businesses and citizens in the area. The idea was that they'd be able to read the equivalence and then maybe look at a nearby structure or tree, and they'd be more capable of making the comparison between the two. The development of our equivalences resulted in several being included in the exhibition opening of Broadway 1000 Steps at the Center for Architecture early in March. This specific equivalence is one that I created that was put on the exhibition, and it states if 5% of New Yorkers commuting by car or taxi switch to bikes, 150 million pounds of carbon dioxide emissions could be saved, or the equivalent to planting a forest 1.3 times the size of Manhattan. To create this equivalence, I went through several steps. First, once I found an estimate on the total number of miles driven by New Yorkers, I then did research on CO2 emissions per gallon, as well as the average mile per gallon for city driving for cars. From there, I was able to conclude that 150 million pounds of carbon dioxide could be saved if 5% of New Yorkers change their means of transportation. While this fact by itself is very eye-opening that such a little change in human behavior can have such a great impact on New York City, I did not believe that the general public would really truly understand what exactly 150 million pounds of carbon dioxide really is. I'm a sustainable development major, and I don't really know what that is. So I decided to relate that to the amount of carbon sequestered by trees that would be the equivalent to reducing the same amount of CO2. And after researching how big a forest would have to be to have the same effect, I then related the size of that forest to the size of Manhattan so that the New York populace would be more able to perceive the information. It'd be more familiar to them. As I've already alluded to, we faced numerous challenges in creating these equivalencies. We really wanted to convey information about sustainability that pertained the most to each unique hub site, the surrounding environment, and the people that come in contact with the site the most. The information we're trying to convey can often become very scientific or dry, so we try to make them very bold and eye-opening. Also, the equivalences also involved quantifying and linking numerous sources, similar to how I linked carbon dioxide emissions from cars and carbon sequestration by trees, and how they affect the overall concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. Finally, it was most important to us that the content of our equivalences would help raise awareness about the effect of human activity within an urban ecosystem and have the potential to change human behavior within New York City. The second step of our project involved beginning to build a possible framework for Mary Miss and City as a Living Laboratory to network out to other organizations who have dedicated themselves to promoting sustainability within New York City. To do this, we used a network toolkit provided by the UN for assisting NGOs build networks, and through this, we identified the goals we hope to obtain from the network, as well as the benefits partnering organizations and the community could obtain. We found that different types of organizations could benefit in different ways from partnering with New City as a Living Laboratory. Schools could benefit from an introduction to green curriculum, as well as possible fieldwork. Businesses could gain green credibility, and NGOs could possibly benefit from fundraising. Although each type of organization had something different to gain, we thought that all organizations could benefit from an increased flow of information between one another, as well as the potential to branch out for future for future projects. Once we established the goals and benefits of the network, we began to compile a database of different types of organizations to provide diversity to the network, which included over 150 organizations. Given that the Broadway 1000 Steps project is already divided into defined hub sites, we decided a location-based network would be most beneficial because it contributes to strengthening community linkages and participation, as well as facilitating dialogue regarding issues within the local community. In order to do this, we created an interactive Google map that mapped each organization's proximity to hub sites, and colors were used to further divide them into categories of theme and organization type. This allowed us to better identify which organizations would be the most willing to participate in the Broadway 1000 Steps initiative and facilitated our ability to contact these organizations. Once we began contacting the organizations, we deemed it necessary to create a condensed report that summarized both the City as Living Laboratory organization and their initiative, Broadway 1000 Steps. And this gives a brief overview of both the organization and the initiative that really provides the information that partnering organizations would need about our client without being too lengthy. It was clear that from contacting these organizations that there was a decent amount of excitement about this project given its uniqueness. Mary Miss is one of the few people in the world that are really combining sustainability and arts in just one single project. So it was clear that there was some excitement of people wanting to get involved in this due to its unique nature. And I'd like to give it back to Anna to conclude.
So this is the work that we've been able to do in just one semester, but we clearly have a lot more work to do in order to bring this project and the network into fruition. But we really think that the groundwork that we've laid down in order to, reach out to different organizations is really crucial in building up excitement and interest in our project, so that when the installation goes up next spring up along Broadway, people are excited to see this project come up on the streets and to join this network and really see the potential Broadway 1000 Steps could have. Looking forward, we think it's important to finalize the network framework. We put a lot of thought into ways that we could organize it by theme, by location, types of organization, and there's limitations to it in any kind of network framework. So this is something that we always call it's in flux. Things are changing, and there's going to be different partners engaging in the project. So once we get our feet off the ground, I think we'll be able to finalize a network framework. And it's also going to be really important to develop a form of a communication platform so that the benefits of being in our network can be realized, so that there's a very easy way for partners to communicate with each other, to broadcast their events to the community, to reach out to an artist that they want to come visit their neighborhood and give some sort of performance or anything like that. So that's going to be a very crucial step that to look forward to. And in the future, to ensure the longevity of this network, we also think that there should be a way to evaluate the connectivity and productivity, and it's going to be very difficult to do, and it's going to be something to put a lot of thought into. But it's crucial, again, to make sure that the goals of the project are actually being assessed instead of, and if they're not, then that gives room for improvement. What can we do? Whose needs aren't being served? So these are, only some of the recommendations that we're going to present to Mary Miss on Thursday, and coming up with these things and sitting down and really talking about it really made us think outside the box, which is really what City as a Living Laboratory is, to think about issues that we think we know, but in a different way. So with that, I'd like to thank Mary Miss and her studio for letting us join her project for the semester, and Betsy Emerson for providing us with her expertise on how to build a network, and of course Professor Gaffin and Maddie for all of their advice for the semester. So I'd happy to answer any questions. So.
Yes, I noticed you at the very end. You mentioned the importance of evaluation to be able to measure effectiveness. I was wondering if there was any possibility. I know it's the end of the semester for you, but if there's any possibility for any of the partnership organizations that you contacted that might be able or willing to pick up the ball on that end, because it just seems like this is really fabulous, and I just would love to see, like a year or two from now, what happened? How do people change their concepts? What effect did it have maybe on school children or other behaviors that may have changed because of this new awareness? And I just didn't know if you'd maybe approached the partnerships with any kind of ongoing relationship like that.
So we didn't specifically approach a potential partner organization with that aspect. But Mary Miss has partnered with universities in the past that have helped her, in fact, really analyze the effectiveness of her art installations. And so those kind of partnerships, and also potentially with Columbia, would help for the evaluation mechanisms. The network can get pretty complex pretty quickly. So those are things that take a little more time to look at in terms of evaluation. Just a simple, for instance, it's called a social network analysis, for instance, and it's really just thinking about a person as a node and then figuring out the people that they know and the people that those people know, and looking at all the linkages. Like, that can get complex pretty quickly, but those kind of things are important to have. So I definitely think universities and other education institutions would be very good help in that.
Hi, I'm wondering, how are these installations funded? Because you talked about how it's a nonprofit organization, and it looks like a really ambitious installation.
It is ambitious, but a lot of it is funding that she comes up with herself. She has a lot of donors, and because she's done a lot of projects in the past, I think that's built interest in her artwork. It really comes from a lot of different sources, but it is funded. But it is an ongoing search as an artist to find money to do your work. So, but it is set in stone that it's going to happen.
Are these seen as permanent installations? There are these art installations that crop up along Broadway for a couple of years. Is that a similar view for this, or is it something that'll be around for longer than that?
No, I don't know exactly how long they will be up, but I think it's a year. They'll be up for a year, but they can't be permanent because of city laws, and you can't. Even the materials that she uses, there's a lot of limitations to that. But the point of the network is to make it a more long-term thing, to establish it as the installation is kind of a visual representation of what Broadway is, that it does connect like a lot of different people, and then that way the network can serve to this, I guess, and ideally the same kind of function as the hub sites, is like that we all center. For example, one of the hub sites is proposed to be at Columbia, so that people who identify with this neighborhood are still connected in what way after the installation is gone. So.
Okay, great. I too want to thank Maddie Cohen, who has been the TA this semester. It would be impossible to get this stuff done without that great assistance, so thank you, Maddie. So we're going to break now. There's a lot of treats here and drinks. I guess, in conclusion, I guess the only thing I can say, these are really, all three of these in the Rockland County are really practical problems. I think we would all agree. These are things that folks outside of academia are struggling with. They didn't have the obvious answers, and they just sort of throw it at the team, but that's the idea. We try to take something really tough and throw it at you guys. So, anyway, I want to thank you all three teams for that extremely hard work. It was a pleasure, watching you all deal with this semester. So, thanks everyone for coming as well.